Dang, how's that for a clap?
You must have been working out.
I do pull-ups.
Yeah. All right, so...
Oh, sorry, Sierra. I didn't mean that.
Oh,
That's not what I meant.
No, sorry, babe. Let's get her
Sorry.
back over here. Come over here, babe. Come up on the chair. Good girl. Now just stay there and chill. All right, so here we are. First podcast, recording it. Finally doing it, brother.
Excellent.
So pretty stoked about this, and want to just introduce ourselves to the audience today. And also, I wanted to address real quick about why we're launching this a few months late. You know, I had all those truck problems, and we started in March, didn't end until last week. It was start, stop, totally threw off my schedule, and I wasn't able to get things going. And then Craig Coleman, who was going to be joining us too as one of the co-hosts, he had foot surgery and had a bone removed out of his foot, so he's still recovering in Virginia. So he'll be joining us shortly.
Cool.
So, but yeah, I just want to talk about what we do. I mean, you've been on the road now for what, a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, we've been pushing 2 years now.
Okay.
And it's Elsa and I, and we live in a little scamp, and that's our home. So it's been awesome thus far, and we've learned a lot. And we have a lot of things that we can't really communicate via YouTube and different things, and it'll be nice to have this platform as like a deeper dive, and we can like have a more sort of intimate conversation and more real conversation, and hopefully like demystify this stuff some for people that are interested in it.
Yeah, I think that's important, because if you look at YouTube, most of the videos, at least that I do, it's all this happy-go-lucky, good vibes.
Right.
But there's challenges with this lifestyle too that people don't foresee, and it's still real life. That's what some people forget. They think that we're just back out here like high-fiving and like, you know, hanging out with Bambi the deer every day and like fishing all the time. But
Which
it's
is pretty accurate.
I would say that's true. But also too, it's like, you know, you still have the real life responsibilities that you do, just minus the house.
Right.
So yeah. So backing up real quick, just introducing myself. I'm Brian Gallion from Kansas originally. Came out to Colorado in 1998 and started full time in July of 2015.
Cool. I'm Barron Link. We're not looking at you, sorry, world.
Mr. Camera.
But I'm Barron Link. I've been full-timing for about 2 years. From Kansas City. What else? I'm a web developer by trade. I don't know if that matters, but that's what I do for work.
Yeah.
I currently live with Elsa, my girlfriend or partner, whatever you want to call it, and our dog camp in the scamp.
Cool. Yeah, and I full time in a pickup truck. I've got a 4x4 Toyota Tacoma, and Sierra's with me full time, my dog, and we pretty much just do trail work and try to get as far back in the backcountry as possible. And live there. Cool. It's awesome. So.
And you have one of the sickest trucks that I've ever seen.
Thanks, man. I'm not done. If it wouldn't have been for all these truck repairs, it'd be a lot sicker, because I have all these plans for a lighting system and it's going to replace a bunch of stuff on the interior, really deck it out and make it truly full-time, self-sufficient, reliant.
Cool.
So,
well, it's already there. But.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to make it better. So, you know, about living in this lifestyle, though, it's for me, I found that it was difficult to deprogram my mind and not feel guilty like on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. not be working.
Right.
You know, because I when I was in the corporate world, it was nonstop. It was just my mindset was I would outwork anybody, and so therefore I worked a ton of hours.
Right.
But I lost myself in the process.
Right.
And I think that's what drove me to come out and seek out a more simplified lifestyle, living like this and living off grid and just being a minimalist.
Yeah. And
it's been such an eye opener for me, and I think of it as like an education in just being real and reconnecting with yourself, because I certainly lost myself in the corporate world.
I think that's sort of the intention, though, and within our culture, it's your measurement of like productivity or contribution is generally in hours worked.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter what exactly you're doing as long as you're working a lot of hours.
Yeah, and I think that society as a whole, and I was certainly guilty of this from time to time, but you identify yourself with either what you do or what you own.
Yeah.
And both of those things can be fleeting.
Right.
And so when that happens, say for example, when a recession hits and everybody loses their shirt, when it comes to finances or their job or whatever it may be, it has an interesting way of like resetting the clock and resetting your perspective to think like, well, maybe I don't need all that stuff. Because when I went through the recession in 2007, that was extremely bad.
Right.
That got me thinking about living more simply and ultimately led me to where I am today.
Right.
And it's interesting to think that like a recession in a environment that I was so heavily entrenched in caused me to go in a completely different direction than what I thought my life would be.
Yeah, it's almost like a forest fire.
Yeah.
Like there's all this like stagnant growth, and like in burning all that off, you have like this new new perspective, like new opportunity, new like life, you know?
Yeah, and a chance to really recreate yourself in the way that you see fit, which is what I've loved, because it seemed like when I first chose this lifestyle, some people were like, "Is Brian all right? Like,
Right.
is everything going okay?"
Yeah.
I remember a conversation with my dad, and he called me up, and it was probably a month after I was on the road, and he was like, "Brian, can I ask you a question?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" You know, and I just got done fly fishing. It was an awesome day. He's like, "All right, when you hit the road, was it because somebody was after you? Because I can help you fix this." And I was like, "No, Dad, that's not the case." He's like, "Is the mafia, the IRS?" No, it's nothing like that. You know, I said I just wanted to change, and I became interested in the lifestyle. But I would go out for 2 or 3 weeks at a time when I had my sign business in Denver that I used to own, and I realized I'm like, you can function out here. It just takes a little bit of creative thinking and.
Right.
The one thing that I will say is you have to be engaged at all moments, because with the weather changing on a dime or whatever, you can't just let things go. You know, you've got to make it happen.
That's true.
And so I've enjoyed the way that environment brings you in the now so much, because you can't be like daydreaming about something else when a storm's barreling down on you.
Yeah, and it's easier, or it's harder now. There aren't as many distractions, so I find myself actually thinking and spending time with my own thoughts.
Absolutely.
Versus just like clicking on YouTube and, you know, watching whatever. You know, like a bunch of Overwatch videos.
Oh, I would do that till like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'd even do it on days where I knew that I had something important coming up the next day, and I'd just be shot for it.
And then also I played video games a bunch, like a bunch more than I do now. Like I played video games a lot. Let's be honest.
Oh, I did too, dude. I was a Call of Duty master.
So I think part of that was sort of to distract myself, given that I wasn't living a life that was like true to my soul.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, I was doing really cool things, and I was doing things that I thought would be fulfilling, and they were in certain aspects, but they weren't like actually who I am.
Yeah.
So I had to wear a lot of sort of metaphorical camouflage, and my whole life was sort of that, like sort of an act of sorts. You know?
I totally agree. That's the way I felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I don't play as many video games. I still enjoy them, you know, and there's still kind of like, I think that there's still virtues in video games. Like I learned a lot about, I don't know, we can go into that. All the things Barron has learned from World of Warcraft. we'll go into that some other time.
But that'll be our Nerd Alert podcast.
Right, but there are virtues there. But now I find that our life and the things that we're doing are like exciting enough to where I could make a video game about it, and it would be a pretty sweet one, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fulfillment in that.
Yeah.
And then being able to like help people like get out of what they're stuck in and stuff is super fulfilling to me. And to show people that there is another way, and we're doing it. And to be doing it rather than just talking about it is it helps my soul, you know, to know that like other people are inspired by it and benefiting from it. You know?
Yeah, I get blown away with the comments that I'll receive from people.
Yeah.
I've been watching you for months now, and you've inspired me to do this, or you've inspired me to do that. And I feel grateful for the opportunity to be able to inspire people.
Right. And I think that's the most fulfilling thing.
Absolutely.
Is when other people are like, man, this is cool. Then that like lights me up. Like when the first person, Aaron, was reading my blog post, and he told me like he's read through all of my blog posts, and they've like helped him out a bunch, and he's a good friend.
That's great.
And that was one of the first people that had ever come to me, and just to hear that was like, oh my gosh, like it's working. Like people are learning, and like this is a good thing. You know?
Yeah, that's really cool when that happens. And I think in my situation, I'm very thankful for this perspective, because I did feel like I was drowning in the corporate world.
Yeah.
And like you said, you had to put on all these camouflages. Like I just felt like my life was a charade. I didn't believe in what I was doing.
Right.
You know, and I was a sales guy. I'd sell widgets. You know, so whatever the product was, it didn't matter what it was. I never believed in any one of those products. I was like, this isn't impacting life. All this is doing is putting money in my own pocket. Right. And I'm in an environment that's ultra competitive, and people are cutthroat and all that stuff. And it wasn't who I was. But I could operate in it, but it wasn't healthy for me, because I became I became overweight. Happy hour was way too often.
Right.
I got to a point where I couldn't sleep at all, so doctors were giving me pills to sleep, and that's a
Right.
slippery slope.
Right.
And so once I realized that environment for me, yeah, I could operate in it and I could actually do very well, it wasn't healthy. Like the end game was going to be short for me.
Right.
Because all those unhealthy habits and unhealthy just the lifestyle I had adopted was to help me cope with the fact that I didn't feel like I belonged in an environment that I didn't believe in.
Right.
And I think a lot of people feel that way. You hear it often. I'm in a rut.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm stuck. Well, nobody wants to feel like that.
Right.
And so when I started looking at that lifestyle or making a lifestyle change, I realized, hey, if I minimize all my stuff, sell everything I have, get my bills down to where it's literally nothing, I can make enough money to kind of figure out what the next step is, and I'm just going to hit the road, and it'll show itself once I get out there. And I think the biggest challenge for anybody getting ready to hit the road is to have enough courage to make that switch.
Yeah.
Because once you realize that you're going to make the switch, you have to muster up the courage and do it.
Right.
And there are things obviously you have to do prior to going out full time, like selling all your stuff and getting your
Right.
affairs in order, those things. But it was amazing in my situation how quickly it happened. I put it out there on Facebook and also on all my social media accounts and to my family and friends, said, hey, I'm going to start hitting the road, or I'm thinking about hitting the road. I'm going to start making the process. Within a month's time, I was on the road. It's like I told my neighbor, hey, I don't want to live in this house anymore. I was renting a house in downtown Denver. I don't want to rent this house anymore. They said, great, we've got a friend who was here last week who said they'd love to rent that house. And so, boom, that happened.
Yeah.
Started selling all my stuff online, and that it was like one after another. And then it's like the excitement started to build.
Right.
And then it's funny, I was telling one of my friends about this. Like when I hit the road, it was July. It was right after the July 4th weekend, so it was July 5th. It was about 10 a.m. And I had a trailer with some stuff in it that I put in a storage unit in Leadville. But I handed over the keys to my house, and I had like music queued up that I thought was like my theme stuff. I'm dorking out, and I'm leaving town. And I get about halfway. I started going on I-70. I get about halfway up Lookout Mountain, and I literally almost had a panic attack. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Am I making the right decision? Did I just screw everything up that I've worked for up to this point? But then I had to check myself and remind myself the reason why I'm leaving that is because it's not right for me.
Right.
And so my biggest obstacle that I had to overcome initially was just getting that courage up and being comfortable with it, because like you said, you're alone with your thoughts a lot back here.
Right.
And you're not watching TV. We're not playing video games online anymore. I'm not wasting time on YouTube. I used to watch Buckethead videos nonstop. Like I just love watching that guy play them. I don't know why. It was like crack cocaine for me. I was addicted. But then you come out here and you don't have those
escapes.
Yeah, you don't have that to distract your mind. And so I enjoyed diving into my thoughts because I had ignored what I thought for 20 years in the corporate world.
Right.
And I thought that's what I had to do in order to succeed. I thought I had to suppress all those things.
I think there's another important point is what is success, and like how do we define success personally, because like if you think of a successful person, like who is that? You think of like generally people who have done really well in business,
right?
But then oftentimes those people are completely miserable
Yep.
and have like a failing personal life.
So that was me in a nutshell in my previous life.
Right. So now I feel like I'm much more successful, albeit that I'm making currently like less money than I was, but I need so much less to thrive that I'm in like a more successful place.
Yeah.
Given my situation, although like by the societal measurement and the scorekeeping mechanism of yearly income, I'm like lower on the leaderboards.
Absolutely, me too. I would be considered destitute by a lot of people.
Right, but it's a preferable position, because now that I don't need so much money, I have the time to like cultivate my mental and like meditate and do all these things that are super good for me, and I'm becoming like a better person at a rapid rate.
Absolutely.
Versus just like building my bank account and then like flushing it all away on frivolous things.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. I feel like the system that I was operating in before said, hey, give us 40 years, the best 40 years of your life, and we'll reward you at the end, if you're lucky, with some time off.
Right.
And it reminds me of this story, this
fisherman.
Yeah, when I was down in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And I'll share that with the audience here. Like, so I was down in Costa Rica in 2004, it was 2003, and we were on the Nicoya Peninsula near Malpais, and there's a beach over there that's really good for surfing. It's incredible surf. Like these waves were hollow, it was barrels nonstop. I mean, there's no one out there. And I was sitting on the shore with my board leashed up and just kind of surveying where I wanted to go. And I didn't know what time it was. And so this local guy came walking by, and I was like, "Hey man, do you know what time it is?" And he kind of looked at me, and he looked up at the sun, and then he looked back at me, and he said, "They say this is the best time of the day." All right, so we're just past 30 minutes here. We're going to go ahead and bring this podcast to a close. Up next, what we're going to be talking about on the next podcast are the different rigs that we use for traveling full-time and living full-time in the backcountry. And then also some ideas of what other people use too, because there's tons of different ways that you can go and enjoy the backcountry with all different sorts of setups.
So we'd love to hear from you guys. So if you want to shoot us an email, my email is barronlink@gmail.com, BARRONLINK @gmail. And then Brian, what's yours?
Yeah, mine's Brian, BRIAN, at ColoradoBackcountryAdventures.com. I went for the longest URL possible, and I was successful.
So we'd love for you to shoot us over questions just in text form, and then even better, if you want to send us an audio file where you introduce yourself, like, "Hey, I'm Barron from Kansas City," or whatever, and then ask your question. Then we'll play that back in our Q&A portion of our next podcast, and then go ahead and answer your question.
So anyway, thanks for tuning in. We're excited to bring this podcast to you. We've got some really great episodes lined up, and there's more to come.
Peace, guys.
Thanks.